doing?
Hi.
Morning.
Well, sure.
Nope, you are.
Okay.
I mean, so you can take it.
Welcome.
Make sure you grab an agenda and financial statements off the table, please.
Morning.
Make sure you grab an agenda. Did we have a sign issue?
Oh, yeah, you know what? Put that out. Pass it around.
Sorry, we didn't put the sign-in sheet back. We're gonna pass it around now, so everyone, we just signed in. Let us know you're here. And you have to cut yourself in use.
Thumbprint.
Okay, I've got just about 10 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 10. I'd like to thank you all for being here today. This was not called to be an inconvenient meeting. This was called because we have several people that are going out of the country and traveling that are board members. And this was really the only time that we could make it in light of some litigation and some other items that we have coming up. So we had to have a meeting, an executive session that we'll be holding after this open session. And there are a couple items that we just felt couldn't wait until our August meeting. So again, I apologize for cutting into your holiday weekend. Please let your neighbors know if they couldn't be here. It is being recorded and it will be put online, and it'll be put online tonight. We'll address and send out the link. I'd like to congratulate the new members. If you'd like to take a second just to say hi.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming. Patrick Eichen. Nice to meet you. Chris Robertson. Nice to meet you guys.
We want to give our thanks to the former board members for their service. Before we get going here, we've called to order. We've introduced each other here. We've established a quorum. We have 3 of the 5 members here. I'm also, for step number 4, we're waiving the approval of the previous minutes as they have not been provided yet. As soon as we get a copy of those, we'll distribute those. Please make sure for those coming in that you grab an agenda and minutes. I'm sorry, and financial. I am going to make a motion that we amend the agenda to allow for an open item to be addressed, an old open item. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The old business is, I'm sure that most of you are aware, and if you weren't aware, if you weren't at the last meeting, you probably received a copy today of a very salacious, slanderous, and otherwise erroneous, a defamatory letter about myself And the letter states or claims that there was a unilateral improper distribution of a deposit as instructed by me to a homeowner. The homeowner provided the board, AAM, who provided the board a copy of a letter where they basically stated that they would proceed with litigation for costs that were incurred due to a construction issue with their building.
Yeah, that letter was dated a year
You are
later.
not on stage right now, thank you.
Oh,
I'll
that's
give you
all
the
right.
floor in a second.
No, it's okay, thank you.
Okay, then please don't interrupt.
Oh, isn't this gonna be like the last meeting where people were standing up and screaming and yelling? Or
Yeah.
not?
Only if you're going to interrupt.
Oh, well, that's what I'm saying. The letter was dated when? A
You
year
are
later?
not. I will give you the floor after I'm done.
Oh.
Thank you. As you know, I am claiming that there was a vote to refund that $1,000, which was a deposit paid by the homeowner. And in lieu of proceeding with litigation, he said if we gave him back the full deposit, which was the $1,000 plus the $1,500, which you normally get back, he would not proceed with any litigation. That was discussed with, Sandy, you're here?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
discussed it with the art committee prior to it being brought up in executive session. I am a board member. I was a board member back in December of 17. Michelle Ellison was also a board member. I'm going to ask, Michelle, would you mind standing up for a second? Michelle, you're here.
Thank you.
Were you a board member in December of 17?
Yes.
Did you receive a letter from
Yes.
AAM which detailed Mr. Fikowitz's claim?
Yes,
And his claim and his response was he wanted his full deposit back?
that is true.
And was this done in executive session?
Yes,
Did you vote on that $1,000 refund?
yes,
Did I unilaterally act to refund any $1,000?
no,
Did I in any way coach you, induce you, threaten you, harass you to speak today?
no.
Can you tell everyone in the room, because I really want everyone to understand, you were on the board and you resigned from the board.
Yes.
Can you please tell everyone why you resigned? Or do you not feel comfortable?
Well, I did receive a threatening email. I received a not very nice letter in the mail from I have no idea who. The board was very combative, and I didn't really feel that I wanted to be involved in being on the board at that time.
Thank you, Michelle.
And Michelle, do you have the minutes where that was voted? Because I have the minutes and that vote did not take place.
We have consistently talked
Oh,
about the,
excuse you.
we have, I'm still on the floor.
I'm
Excuse
asking
you.
her a question.
AAM has consistently been beaten into the ground by former board members.
Watch your mouth.
For
Please
being-
profanity with me.
Former board members for being incompetent, for being less than fulfilling their duties, and I can't help it if it didn't make the minutes. The fact is, there was
Didn't take
nothing
place.
that was done unilaterally. And I also have a letter from Ken Palmer to the other board members, excluding me. I went through all PRM's emails. As he did with dozens of emails, they excluded me. Saying that they don't have any problem with Chris Fakowitz. They only had a problem with me acting unilaterally. Well, in order for there to be an illegal action, it had to illegally benefit someone. And if you don't have a problem with the person receiving those funds, there wasn't an issue. So I want to put this to bed once and for all. Instead of spending thousands of dollars on legal fees to recover $1,000 of a deposit that was voted on, it was not done illegally. They have spent thousands of dollars with an attorney illegally when all they needed to do was what I just did right now. Ask the former board member, did you or did you not vote on it? That's the only way it could have been illegal, is if I called up Wendy at AAM and said, give Chris his $1,000 back. It didn't happen that
Actually, you
way.
didn't call, you sent an email.
And it
was
didn't
just
happen.
to Wendy, it didn't include us, Michelle, and it did happen. because
It
there's
didn't
also-
need to include you because we had voted on
Oh,
it.
well, that's unilateral
Because we had
emails.
already voted on
No,
it.
that was a non-refundable deposit, and it was not voted on, and the
Well,
minutes show
you
it was
can,
not voted on.
I just told you, we just had a second
Okay, but
witness
the
that said it
minutes
was.
are
Okay,
what the
Kim,
court will
There's
look
a
at.
lot of things in the minute. Chris, yes, you're recognized.
I'm the homeowner that's in question here.
AAM to the minutes, yes.
Can you keep saying non-refundable? I'll happily give back $1,000 and then I'll sue the board for the probably $12,000 or $13,000 of interest that occurred because of the delays. I was trying to be a good homeowner and just say, hey, I think this is fair. I think that's what the board saw. I don't want to cost the community any more money. It's $1,000 versus 12 or 13 plus legal fees. Seems kind of like a no-brainer to me, especially since it happened 2 years ago. Over 2 years ago. That's just my 2 cents, but I mean, if you really want that $1,000 back, I mean, that seems kind of absurd to me.
There have been a lot of slanderous and salacious accusations around this payment. And there will be further action on that because we do have, yes, I know, I already know about your ADRA, we're gonna talk in a second. Yes, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Can I ask Chris a question?
Oh, you can ask anyone a question.
Chris, can I ask what shut the construction down?
So, yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
essentially, what happened was it was probably like right around Thanksgiving, we got a Clinton Goodman, who was the attorney for AAM or the HOA, I'm not actually sure who he was affiliated with.
He was hired by the management company,
Okay,
not the HOA.
well, I said the management.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, just to clarify.
Okay. Yeah.
But he
So,
represented the,
essentially,
Association.
Carrie, my wife, she got a kind of a threatening voicemail, email, whatever, actually both. And then he called me, I was actually at the house working.
From Clint, he threatened an email and a voicemail? Okay.
Yeah, so he actually called me and said, oh, I'm glad I got a hold of you. I left a message on your wife saying we had to stop construction immediately or face legal action. So we're like, well, what for? And he said, well, there was something that you're building that's illegal. And I'm like, no, I have everything that's legal. It's all approved. It's all city approved, HOA approved, everything. And they couldn't find the documentation for it. AAM couldn't. So they said, stop work immediately. So we talked to our attorney. He said, it's the holidays. Can you give them a day or two off? We'll get it squared away. Well, a day or two turned into 3 or 4 weeks. Next thing you know, I mean, it's a domino effect. So we
And
ended up,
stop for what? They weren't specific on why they were.
they said
They
we had to
received a
stop
homeowner
building on
complaint.
our RV garage, which, before we could move on further.
Okay,
They
so
thought
it was a
something
homeowner
illegal.
that complained.
a homeowner
about-
complained
about
and
the RV
without
garage.
specifics saying that it was a 2-story casita, which it was
Yeah.
incorrect.
Well, regardless of all that, like, essentially it should have never been stopped to begin with.
Right.
And that's what.
But that was the reason. The
Yeah.
So the
homeowner
homeowner
complaint
complained
was
to
the
the
reason
management
why.
company, and
To
the
my
I just
management
wanted to know why.
company
I didn't- I
stopped
didn't
the
know.
progress.
I think
Yes,
the
why
reason
not?
why that
Yeah.
happened,
I
I
mean,
think
Because the
that,
board
when-
did not, so would maybe the ARC, or is it just the management company?
The ARC was not consulted at all.
yeah,
Oh,
That
it
was one of the
the board.
problems.
but I think what happened is this
No,
happened.
no, actually the board was.
I think this happened.
Wendy in her email says that they consulted the board when she talked to
Well,
me on
that's
the phone.
just been one board member.
I'm not sure about that, I'm not on the
So
board,
Whatever,
but
it's
Did you
still
know?
$1,000.
I'm sorry, Harry, go ahead.
Over here.
Harry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
well,
Harry
investment of
Bissell?
$1,000 in the state of Arizona is a felony.
Well, how about 10 grand? How
Like-
about 10,000 for Ken Palmer?
Can
This
we
whole
not
thing.
involve
That was
Yeah,
a
Okay,
can we
terrible-
please stick to the, okay. I wanted to get it on camera, thank you.
Well, what
We-
about the illegal appointment? Can we get that on camera?
If you'd like to, we have a
Sure.
decision from Clint Goodman.
Please.
You asked a question.
No, he's interrupting, go ahead.
You asked the question. I was, in April of 17, I was appointed to the board. And
How
I
were you
received,
appointed?
would you please let me respond if you're gonna ask a question?
Tell
Rather
him
than
how
being
you
rude.
were
Hang on,
appointed.
just hold on. You'll have your time.
I received a phone call from AAM telling me that I was appointed to the board and that they were having a meeting regarding several legal issues to show up and be there. I showed up, nobody questioned that I was on the board, I didn't know how anything happened, I received a phone call from AAM. After dozens of emails from Kim Clover saying, you must have been complicit with Michael Casano, there's no other way you got on the board, how did you get appointed to the board, what was your, and then AAM provided a series of emails where she actually voted for me to be appointed to the board. So she's complaining about me not being appointed to the board. Clint Goodman gave you the opinion that I was on the board legally. And I showed up and I was asked to represent the association at the mediation hearing. So do you have something different?
Yes,
Please share.
yes.
Please do share.
So for someone to be appointed, it has to occur in an open meeting.
Not necessarily.
Yes, it does. Don't interrupt. Has to occur in an open meeting. There has to be a motion, a second, and a discussion. And we do know this from Damon Darachek, because we did try to appoint him via email, and we were told, no, that would be illegal. He would have to be elected or appointed at an open meeting, not an executive meeting, but very clear an open meeting. So this did not occur with Paul Pauls. He, as he just stated, received a phone call from AAM.
Do you know what a unanimous written consent is, Dan?
Yes, and it's not valid through email. And then
It
once
is.
again, an appointment has to be done in an open
We have
meeting.
legal representation that
So
told
there
us
we
it
go.
was
Are you
legal.
an attorney, Kim? I'm just curious.
No, but if you didn't
Okay.
get this packet from the attorney, I'll be happy to share it, because.
I did, I thought it was a waste
Yeah.
of paper and resources.
And thousands of dollars of
You're
legal fees.
chasing
So-
$1,000.
So something we're gonna try to do
Well,
going
the
forward.
legal appointment, I don't
So
know
Kim,
if you put
I'll take the floor
$1,000
now,
on it.
thanks. Something we're gonna try to do going forward is use our resources wisely
Yes.
on issues that the whole community is concerned about. Not one person, not two people. We're not gonna have any more of this.
Back and forth.
Yeah, it's a waste of our resources, it's a waste of our time.
Thank you for allowing me to amend the agenda. Let's get back on the agenda items. The first item is old business, non-com status. Ken was supposed to be here. He informed us this morning that he couldn't make it. I guess his plans changed this morning. My question is, where do we stand? We've given a check for over $100,000 to a gentleman who we have no written contract with, and in anticipation of getting money back. And I am in the process of doing my own research, because there were certain properties that were ceded to the commercial association back in 2008, 2006, and 2008 that I believe included these properties that were non-com properties at one time. And rather than spending $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 trying to investigate whether or not I gave an illegal $1,000 back, I would think rather than giving $30,000 of your money away, you would probably spend maybe a couple $1,000s on an attorney on that. But anyway, I'm
Yeah.
continuing to look into that.
I actually have a question on that. So Paul,
Yeah.
Ruben, just a quick question for you. So, my understanding, because this occurred before I was on the board, so my understanding was these funds that were being collected sat in an account at AAM and just continually just grew as we collected that $11.95. So when we made the transition to PRM, there was the decision at that time to try to figure out, how can we release these funds, or what's the best way to take care of it. So my question is, and the way it stands right now, just to clarify, so there was a decision made by a board member, I think it was Ken, to work with, I just want to make sure I have gentlemen who, my question is, originally owned that property to try and, I'm assuming that that money was just transitioned over to AAM, or sorry, PRM, and sat in account similar to the way that it sits.
No,
sat
we couldn't use the checks
Okay.
because we didn't manage the
Okay.
non-commercial association.
Mm-hmm.
And the checks were two checks, I believe, made payable to non-commercial.
Yeah.
So all we did was we just sat with those checks
Right.
uncashed.
So, okay, thanks for
Yeah.
clarification. So essentially those checks, we just would have had those checks, basically. We could have sorted that.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't deposit them, so
Sure,
we just sat
understandable.
with them.
I just wanted to make sure and understand what the, had we not decided to move the way that we've moved, what the
I
alternative
guess
path
they still
was.
would have
There's
been
an
sitting
agenda
there.
and financials
Okay.
in that.
Yeah.
Thanks, no, I appreciate that.
Yes?
Back on December 14th, 2017, was there a decision made to increase that assessment of the non-commercial?
Not to increase it,
Oh, not to increase it?
to continue.
It's been
No.
11.95 the whole time.
Because you, I know the board knew nothing about it.
It's in some minutes you're reading.
No, it's not in minutes. Huh, it's a consent to action signed by you
Yeah.
to increase the non-commercial property owners association assessments.
To $11.95, which is what it was.
No, by 20% to $57.30.
Oh, it didn't happen, did it?
No, I guess they found out that was illegal, you shouldn't have been signing
Kim?
it.
Okay. Yes.
What's the point then?
On this
Kim, for bringing
non-commercial
this up?
thing,
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, the money was in there. We also paid AAM $250 to manage wasteland,
right.
and we paid
A month.
the landscape company $400 a month, which is owned by AAM.
Yeah.
To, I don't know what the hell they did for $400.
So we
Yeah.
maintained the property, I believe.
Right,
And
so
so-
that money was getting taken out every month. So it just wasn't money sitting in an account, AAM and their,
Yeah, and so I guess my
deals with taking
thought
money.
about this is, if you maintain a property for over 10 years,
that's be 20 years, but.
oh, is it 20 years now?
Well,
Yeah.
in PA, it's 20 years, I don't know what
Okay.
laws are out here, but yeah.
So,
anyway,
if you maintain a property at some point for some length of time, and the owner who had it before just doesn't do anything with it at all, I would think there'd be some legal basis for us to say it was ours to begin with.
Adverse
Yes.
Thank you. Yep.
There you
From
go.
the attorney in the back.
Yeah,
Free
I
advice.
think it's 20, I don't think
Yeah.
it's 10.
I think my concern, and yeah, I was at the past meetings where we talked about the fees that AM was collecting and essentially what work was being done. My biggest concern at this point is the fact that there's funds that we no longer have possession with, and we have no documentation around it, and
There
no
wasn't even a
guarantee that
letter.
we'll get those funds back.
Right,
But we never really
We
had
had the right
access
to
to
them
them
anyway.
anyway.
yeah.
But we have them, they're your
Yes,
funds,
yeah.
everybody
If-
paid into
if
that,
we
those
had
are
held
funds
the
that
check.
every
Right.
community member paid into. So
Right.
regardless of whether or not we could have done something with it in the way that we did it, don't disagree. I just think, again, an opportunity rather than saying with a blind leap of faith, here you go, let's make this right, and you can keep 30%, we could have potentially exhausted all avenues
That was
to make sure that
directed in
we.
the original documents, the split of what money belonged to which parcel
Mhm.
was way back when.
Sure.
We don't have the right to the 30%, it was in the documents.
Sure.
So if you go back and look at that, we only had a right to 70% of it,
Mhm.
based on the fact that that's what we put in.
Sure.
In the
So
back.
then where's the documentation for the other 70%?
Well, that would be in the documents that AAM shredded probably, but some people do still
We'll
have
get to that.
copies.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
get to that
in a
part.
second.
So I understand there's what is basically a handshake agreement at this point, that the owner of the property is gonna give us 70,000, they're maintaining their 30,000 of these funds, is that?
Wrong
That-
numbers, yeah.
That's what we understand, so,
What
I
would
would've
we
thought-
follow through on
I would've,
the word?
yeah, I would've thought we would've at least created a written agreement
Mhm.
saying, hey, we're gonna hand you a check, we anticipate getting funds back, none of that was done to our knowledge.
Okay, so what happens with the 70,000 that gets back to our community? Is that gonna be refunded to homeowners, or is that gonna be put in a general fund for any type of capital improvements? What's gonna happen with that money?
It will initially go into the commercial funds, and based on the results of the engineering study and so on, we can determine if we have an overage or where those funds will be allocated.
And if they are gonna be refunded to homeowners to an extent, will they be proportional to what we paid in?
Well, I think that's
Yeah.
And
one of the
and what about all the
questions.
residents who moved out and left, who paid
Yeah.
in for all those years?
All
and
great
exactly-
questions.
I mean, those
Yeah,
are all
well,
yeah.
questions.
Yeah, all great
But
questions. The problem is we need the money
obviously
first.
it's all dependent on the funds.
Yeah.
Let's get the money first.
It's a moot point if we don't get it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Wait till we get it.
And who handed over the check?
Ken Palmer.
Oh, okay. Do we have anything in written? Nothing.
Nothing
Not that
was
we see.
voted on by the board to do that. There was no agreement, there was no discussion to turn that check over. He unilaterally, based on him and Priscilla's work,
Excuse me, we had no right to the money in the
We had
first
no
place,
right to
and
the
we had
money.
no board that
excuse
that
me,
was
we
on
held
that.
that money
Only
for
a
years.
collection.
We could have held it
No,
for 3 more
we
months
didn't
to get a
hold it.
legal opinion.
We didn't
But
pay it for
instead,
years.
Ken decided it was the right thing to do to give them a
Well, it's
check.
the legal thing to do.
Has it
Not
been
the right
transacted?
legal
fund
thing.
those
And
funds.
it-
It's a legal thing. to
That,
do.
that money is in someone else's account right now. Whether we get our piece back is we're waiting for.
I have an odd question. I understand that Ken couldn't make it today.
Yeah.
So that's the first meeting he's missed that I know, but there's been another board member that's missed 4, I think.
Yep.
My question is, because it was brought up at the last board meeting, is he going to resign or is he gonna stay because him continuing not to be
I
here?
hope he makes it, he was out with town with family.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it just, maybe the guy travels a lot, etc. I'm just wondering, is his goal to continue on the board, and will he be present in the future, or is he thinking about resigning?
I'm sorry, I'm not cutting you off because we will have an open session.
Okay,
I'd
got
like to step, but yes, please, you can ask that question and I'm,
Yes,
will
sir.
be more than
All right,
happy to
sorry.
address it.
Can I, and I apologize because we're relatively new to the community, but on this 1195
Yeah.
assessment, okay. So that's been going on forever,
Forever.
right? And it was to maintain that small strip of trail.
property yet.
Well,
One trail,
and there's
track
several, there's several other pieces that were lumped into one. That's why the taxes were so low. They're disjointed pieces of property that when they're lumped together, they can't be sold commercially. That makes them different. But go ahead, Jess.
Okay, so when we made the switch, who made the decision to just stop assessing everybody? I mean, how did all of that come about? Is this guy ever gonna come back and say, hey, find something back when the community was created that says, you guys owe us this money?
Well, if the documentation that's been put together by Ken and Priscilla and the 70-30 is correct, their claim would only be for the 30%. But the issue that I have is the homeowners have paid in 100% into that fund. The former owner, I'm still looking into the ceding of that property, and I think I have enough documentation to prove that he ceded that property to the commercial association, which means there is no 70-30 split. But regardless, I don't think a check should have been turned over unilaterally to somebody without a written agreement or even a statement of understanding.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But
worst case, I believe, based on what was historical back in 2004, 5, and 6, the 70-30% split would be the worst case.
okay. I know that his association back in November was not in good standing with the Arizona Corporation Commission. Has he rectified that?
For the non-common. Not for the common, for the non-common.
Yeah, so I think what he had to do was reinstitute that, so then he could cash the check. So he had to go back and make the LLC valid again, and then cash the check.
Well, a homeowners association is a nonprofit.
Correct.
But you still have to maintain.
You have to
Your
file
status.
annually.
Right,
Yeah.
correct.
It's a cursory filing. It means nothing.
Right,
Like
but
some
if
people,
you don't file it,
they
you're
can
not in good
come after you.
standing.
Yeah. You can lose your standing.
So one more point on this, and then we'll move on. Anything else, or are we
Yeah.
gonna ask him?
What I
Okay.
was gonna say, so does anyone know, has he reestablished it and cashed the check? Do we know
I
that?
do not know.
So who's going to find that out?
Well,
that
Ken was the one who had the, that's what I was going to try to update today.
If you look on the Corporation Commission website, he has reestablished as of either December or January. It does show them in current standing.
Do you know if he cashed the check?
I do not know.
Okay.
And answer your question, the other question, the $11.95, that was stopped by AAM. After we found out about this, where this $11.95 was going and how much money was in this account. That's how that got stopped.
It got stopped
That's
because
that's
we
incorrect.
Because
It was
stopped
stopped
when
when
PRM
PRM took over and they said, we can't assess
we
it.
can't assess
It had nothing to do with AAM
Yeah,
changing their
it's
stuff.
And the Attorney
That's all.
General is involved in that as
Okay,
well.
that's,
Yeah.
okay,
Anything in the back, or are we done?
okay,
Alright.
archive update. Can we get an update from the archive committee?
Kim?
Oh, I gave the update the last meeting.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
asking for one today.
Didn't know this was a short notice meeting. I wasn't prepared to have one today. I offered one the last time. Do we have those minutes from the architectural committee for the 3 years yet?
I'm waiting for them for the last 6 months.
No, for the
Next.
3 years prior, do we have those? yet?
Backflow testing and cover replacement, next item.
That would be,
That was Ken.
Yeah.
Paul, do you have any information? Did he provide you with anything?
I know that we were required to do the backflow testing by the city.
Right.
So we'd have someone who's certified to do that. And then there were repairs required. I believe they would have had to have been made. And I guess this is sort of after the fact, saying on the board to ratify that there's really no choice but to go ahead with that.
Do we have the quotes?
I think the work was already done, so I can get that.
I
to
don't
you.
believe it was. I think you got a
It
quote
wasn't
for
done
just,
already?
no, it has not been done
I
already.
can check the status.
Okay.
Check the status.
It came in somewhere around $8,000 and change, which
Well, that was
was
drywall.
estimated at the
so
last-
that's in black.
The drywall and the backflow testing.
The
and-
backflow is separate, the other issue is a drywall. Now, you do have a proposal on the drywall, which just came in, I think, late yesterday.
Mhm. And the total on
And
that
that was
was?
shared with all the board members?
Yesterday, it came in, and that was shared with the board members. It was a report from Current Resources
Why
on
didn't
all
you-
your dry wells and everything having to do with the dry well system.
Right.
And it's very detailed, multiple pages, giving you specific conditions of specific locations, and basically proposing a number of repairs and maintenance issues totaling, I think it was $8,005.
I'll make a motion that we accept the proposal that I did read. I was trying to see if it included the covers also, Kim. Thank you. I'll make a motion that we accept the drywall repairs, because they do need to be done. And with monsoon season, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm making a motion to accept it because monsoon season is coming. We really want those, the drywalls open and so on. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second. Before we move on, any other discussion from the board?
No.
Okay, Michelle, you got a comment, homeowners?
I just wanted to say that I believe maybe 2 years ago, they had I think the word was drywall. They had it repaired or cleaned out or something.
Yeah.
And it was an expensive item, and we did that about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's to a portion of them.
Yes,
And I
that was
think
a
there's,
few of them.
there's others they've found since that have got.
Oh, okay.
They've discovered a couple, I think, too.
What about the,
Yeah.
go ahead,
Yeah.
Yolanda.
Well, if you're still talking about the backflow, I would like to back up to B when we're done with the backflow.
Okay.
One,
Archive.
the one drywall that had the oil poured down it, how did we rectify that?
Do you know which one that is?
I do not, I just remember it in one of the meetings.
I guess they'll have to dig it.
Yeah,
They have
and
to
that's,
dig
yeah,
it.
that's, if we only came back with $8,000, there's no way they're fixing that for $8,000. I just, yeah.
I'll have to check it. Supposedly they gave us a report on each one.
I thought there was one that somebody had poured something down that they,
Yeah, I saw some.
That's where they had to
photographs, a lot of
change out the
trash
filter and all that.
bottles.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second?
Second.
Vote?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I'm sorry, you wanted to go back to B?
Yes.
Yes, please, archive?
From what I understand, because I am on the archive committee, there has to be a board member that is chairperson.
We're going to get into
To
committee
committees.
structures and new business.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Landscape fees, okay, this, for those of you who were at the last meeting, there was an attempt to have an open meeting, and one of the items that was on that was to allow the landscaping company to trim back some of the trees to allow the painters to finish the painting. That was one area where the landscapers, from my understanding, have completed the work, and it was in order to facilitate the finishing of the painting. So formally, so that everyone understands what occurred and that it happened and that it is open, I am going to make a motion that we do approve the work that was tried to push through last meeting, to approve them to trim back to allow the completion of the painting project. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments, homeowners?
Whatever happened with that 404 report from the Army Corps of Engineers and what we're allowed to do, and the fact that we haven't gotten a report from the City of Peoria Fire Marshal or whoever oversees that?
When we get to landscaping,
far
can we
as,
address that?
Trimming, but that, in other words, you're authorizing work to be done that we don't have approval from the city on, or
Well,
from
the
the Army
fact
Corps of
is, the
Engineers?
landscape committee already approved them to do that, and we're just ratifying the bill right now. So you may want to talk to, who was on the landscaping committee? Would that be Ken and Priscilla?
No, that would not be, so don't take their names.
I think it was Priscilla.
No, it wasn't.
She's not on the landscape committee?
I don't believe so.
I don't think you
That was-
better check.
That was what Ken provided.
Yeah,
So the board has not gotten the city clearance for trails and riparians? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I believe.
when we get to new business, you can ask us.
We're talking about landscaping. why
We're
am I
talking
asking
about
you?
trimming back to allow painting of walls. We're not talking about trimming back beyond any code or
Some
fire
of those
code.
walls are in face up to
Riparian areas.
riparian areas.
Well, if we
So
can
that's
get
what-
a member of the landscape committee here, we'll find out what they
Why
authorize.
can't you find out if you're the president? So you're saying we don't know if there's city
Okay,
clearance?
so
Yeah.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. F was a landscape proposal. As you may recall, at one of the previous meetings, there was a discussion and a passage to have a landscape committee, a landscape company come in and, in light of us switching landscape companies, give us an assessment of what really needed to be done, what should be done, what was in disrepair, bad repair, etc. So Ken was going to give a proposal today. They've given him several designs. So I don't know why they would have given them to Ken if he wasn't on the landscape committee, but they gave him several designs to put forward, and since he's not here today, we'll put that off or table it till August. I do have a question, going back to the landscape bid and so on. The painting committee, are there any members of the painting committee here?
Yes.
Is there any scheduled walkthrough
You
for
can't
the?
keep track of on the committee,
Is there,
Mr. President.
I knew, I just wanted you to admit it. Is there
Oh
any
my God,
scheduled
we play
time?
games at these meetings.
Is there any schedule, well, I'm seeing a lot of,
Oh, what's your question?
is there any schedule to walk through and do a punch list for the painters?
Yes,
When is that scheduled?
I'm in contact with him, he emailed me, and I'm in the process of emailing him back.
And that will go out so other members can be a part of that walkthrough?
Oh, of course, the paint committee has always been.
So
in
you guys,
contact with
as
each other.
homeowners, if you guys see anything out of order with the painting, if you'll take a picture of it on your phone and email it to us.
Say where it is.
We're gonna say exactly where it is, so then, we can
Cibola
find
Vista.
the address. Yeah, exactly.
Is there a general email bucket to do that? Or is it PRM,
Yeah.
so it goes with
I'll email
PRM?
you, could certainly
Okay.
do it to us, yes.
Thank you.
With a picture, the locations
It's,
important.
it's right there on the agenda.
Got it.
It's on.
As we start getting items as well, we will be, for example, minutes will be published, the video will be published. Transparency is key. You will be informed of when meetings are going to happen and so on.
Michelle, you
Yeah.
got something?
Yes, I was just wondering in the painting,
Process?
scope,
Yeah.
are they going to be painting the chairs and the trash cans?
We were just talking about
We'll bring that up in new business.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Okay.
Speaking of which, let's move on to new business. Again, this meeting was called. It was not a regularly scheduled meeting, but we notified the homeowners with postings on the mailboxes, and we felt that there were certain issues that just couldn't wait till August.
Let me
And
interrupt you on
please.
emails.
Yes.
If you guys don't have your emails
Ah.
updated with PRM, please do so, because we'd like to start getting surveys to you guys and ask you questions and get your input from the community, so then you guys can help create the vote and the answer that we're just gonna second for you. But that's how we'd like to do things in the future. Email, you'll get a lot of your minutes, all the documents we handed out today, you'll get those via email. Is that okay with everybody?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Good.
I have a quick comment on
Yes.
that.
Yep.
I'm fine with emails.
We'll also
But-
post them on the
but
website.
You have to go with the lowest common denominator
Yeah.
in a
Mhm.
community this large. And that typically is mail, paper mail, with whoever the lowest common denominator is. So I would suggest that you can't just rely on emails.
Not all the time, I agree. I agree completely. So,
you know,
something
you need-
else, like we were talking about doing a community website, but there's people that actually have the capability of helping us there, and us not go expend a lot of money to go build a community website. That would be nice to know as well. Because then we could post these there as well,
Right.
just another medium that's constant, in
Wasn't
case
there
you missed the email.
one in existence? at
There
one
used to
time?
be, but
Yeah.
it was managed by AAM, and so when we got rid of AAM, it went with them. So my proposal would be to ultimately build one that's a community-owned page that we don't get rid of if we ever change anything.
Right, because Facebook, honestly,
Yeah.
Facebook next door
Mm,
is not a good medium.
I agree.
Well, and also using the alternative though, mailing to, 340 plus homes, 350 homes. The cost for, okay, let's send out an agenda, let's send out, I mean,
I agree,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but if you're going to rely on email,
Well, I can
you
respond to
need,
that.
you need,
On things that aren't real time sensitive, we have the ability to mail only to the people who have not provided us email. So this was a short
Okay.
notice.
Yeah.
right,
But the other instances, what we typically do is a vast majority of members have emails, so they get a group email. The ones that don't, we print envelopes for the ones that don't, and it's only a handful that we would then mail the same thing to,
Okay.
so they would
Right.
get it by mail.
That's
but,
good.
but
That's
you
good.
need to
That's a good
inform
idea.
everybody in the community that you wanna do this by email.
Right, yeah.
And if there's
It's
any
on
that,
video.
if there's,
Yeah, and
There's
the
any
ones
that
that
don't.
don't have
I-
email right now at all, maybe, or don't wanna give it to us, they will ultimately get all the notices that people get
Correct.
by email in the mail, except for this one because it was a short.
Right, no, I'm just suggesting that we need to like get away from the next door Facebook
Agree, completely.
Yes.
100%.
postings, because those are not effective.
One thing we might want to consider is, I know some people often have emails but don't check them. So perhaps if you could send an email saying, responding to this email, you often receive notices via email, otherwise one will be mail delivered, something along those lines,
That's a
where
good
there's
point,
some affirmative opt-in procedure.
Well, you have an excellent point, because we're using constant contact for this, because if we try to group email 300 people, then Cox says you're spamming and you're not allowed to do that.
Right.
So we've been using constant contact, and of course, we just use it for communication, but it's mainly a marketing tool, so they give you feedback. So to that point, it's a concern, because this is all new for everybody, the technology. We're finding that on average, when we send out the group email, we find out back from constant contact, only 60% of the people are opening it.
Okay.
So, but I guess I don't know how many people throw out their mail either. So.
Yeah. Oh, plus then you've got fake addresses, fake emails, and everything, you never know. Okay, so anyway, the reason I'm bringing this whole thing up is there was an expenditure for the room. For us to have this room today, we had to search several alternatives in order to find a room to have this meeting. I'm making a motion. The total fee was $170, which was slightly larger than our normal meeting. However, it was the only meeting that was available, and $20 was not that significant. So I am making a motion that we accept that expenditure.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next point is committee structures. Most importantly, as you know, we have an ARC committee. We have I had a list of them here, and for whatever reason I misplaced them. We have an ARC committee. We have an archive committee. We have a landscape committee. We have a paint committee, which kind of goes away after the final walkthrough. And as I remember, there was an events committee. If we can address them all one at a time, I'd appreciate it. The ARC committee needs to be chaired by a active board member per our CCNRs. Brett Veldhusen is no longer a board member. He chaired the committee. So I would like to nominate Chris
Okay.
to be the chairman of the ARC committee. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, he will now be sending out notices and letting you know when there are meetings, etc. The archive committee, yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
Can I ask one question
Sure.
about with regard to that art committee, is there anything in motion, or have we given any thought to making that a community position only, to where someone that doesn't live in our community can't be on that
It
board?
should be community
Yes,
based.
thank you.
Okay,
I'm
well,
sorry, it's part of the legal CCNRs that anybody
Yeah.
can be, and it's written in there, so that would take a 75% vote of the
I'm
members.
asking you a question, I'm
Yeah.
asking, do we have something in motion? It makes
No.
no sense to me. Why would I be on an art committee that's in Apache Junction? Absolutely no sense. So if we need to do something, then I say that we do that and start that process.
Okay.
One of 1,000 things I know you got coming, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to bring that up.
Well, doesn't it say that they don't have to be in the community? It doesn't say it's required to have somebody from outside the community.
Absolutely, correct.
So it's an option,
Right.
it's not a necessity.
Right.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, in January, when we were putting people on the art committee, there were people that, kind of wanted to be on the art committee and weren't allowed to be on the art committee. So I think there's a vetting process that seems like can take place that is outside of the scope of the CCNRs. That we can make sure that someone gets in the community.
Probably, yes.
But then there will be no alternates?
No, there should be alternates. Sure.
No, but I mean, if there's a committee and 9 people signed up for the committee, then those people are on the committee. You
Yeah.
can't just arbitrarily say, you're an alternate, you're an alternate, you're an alternate, and the 3 of us are the board members or the people that decide.
Well, you have to be prudent, and it does state it has to be at least 3 members. But if you make it 9 members and 5 are consistently not showing up, you never hit a quorum. So making the size of the committee needs to be commensurate with practicality. So that's something that I believe our new chairman will address.
I was gonna say, if you are showing up, you only miss 1, you should not become an alternate.
Right.
The archive committee is next, and likewise that needs to be chaired by a board member.
And
Going back to the art committee,
Yes.
Do you have it on record that Brett was the chair? Cause I had in my notes that, Ken Palmer was.
That's what I did.
I'm sorry?
I had it down with Ken also.
Ken Palmer was the
Ken
chairman,
Palmer.
and he's not here, so
I mean,
I think you
I
better
don't-
wait
I
on
don't
that to
really-
be sure.
yeah,
I don't believe Brett was the chair.
I think that's irrelevant at this point.
It's irrelevant. We're thanking him
Not
for
if
his
someone
service.
else is already the chairman, how could we have another
We're
chairman?
replacing him. We voted to replace him.
You voted
Whether
to
it's
replace Brett, you
Brett or
didn't vote to
We
replace
voted to
Ken.
replace Brett.
We're, okay,
I think it's
I
done.
will make a motion that we replace Ken if he is truly the chair of the art committee.
Under what grounds?
The vote.
As it says, discretionary, at the discretion of the board.
So I wonder if it's, I know he was concerned about an ARC member not even living in the community. What about a board member who only lives in the community, what, 2 days a week?
Okay, second,
Part-time?
Second.
aye,
Aye.
thank you.
You know,
Oh, wait a minute,
Yes.
yes.
you guys, I know that all three of you are kind of on the same sync.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that going forward, we're gonna get beyond all of this. But
Yes, me too, yeah.
arbitrarily removing a chair seems to be a
We're
little.
moving a committee chair, not from the
Yeah.
board. And the reason we're doing so, if we want it, when we get into the minutes, if you'd like to look, there were certain actions upon that chairman that the homeowners didn't really want to see happening. So we're moving in a different direction on there.
Well, would you share that then? Because you're making a statement that could be
Well-
false.
I'll share it, I was at the last meeting.
There's no.
No. We're done. No, we're, yeah.
You did exactly the same thing that happened with the last board, and I honestly had some concerns about it.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to share some
Yeah.
details with you.
Yeah.
That you'll start to understand, why we as a board wanna move in a positive direction with the community.
Okay, but that's not running ramshot over, board members that aren't here.
I wouldn't necessarily,
Yeah, I think
call
we
it
should wait till
ramshot.
they're here.
You know, I think that there are probably some things that eventually we'll be able to discuss in more detail.
Especially since this was a last minute kind of meeting, it wasn't really on the schedule, and then you're making decisions,
So-
you're missing two
yeah.
board members.
Kim, thanks for your feedback. I appreciate it.
Of course,
Thank you.
so we should probably maybe table that and then have a discussion on it.
No.
Yeah, I think the board vote.
The next item, no. The next item is the archive committee. Likewise, the former chair of the archive committee is no longer on the board. And, are there anybody who wants to nominate anyone?
Yes, I do. I wanna nominate you.
Well, that's from the floor. Any board members?
I'll nominate you.
I'll second it.
I'll accept. And, all those, I'm sorry, we have an motion, we have a second. Any comments, anything? Yes.
So you did state a while back that you were going to be getting all the records, have you gotten them?
As a matter of fact, yes. You have two thumb drives that were provided to you by,
No, I'm asking, did you get them? You
I'm
stated-
asking the.
No, I was asking a question.
Okay, I am
You stated
asking,
you were going to get the records from Mountain Iron, did
Okay.
you get them? Yes or
Iron,
no?
Iron Mountain.
Iron Mountain, I have contacted and I've contacted AAM.
Yes?
And
you
they have provided you 7 years worth of financial statements, minutes, fines, fees, etc. on those two thumb drives. Do you have those two thumb
No,
drives?
I don't.
So do you know, you're the archive
I'm not-
committee and you don't have the thumb drives that were provided?
They didn't give them to me, they must have lied to you. Why would they give them to you if you're the president?
You were on the committee, do you ever see thumb
I
drives?
was not on the archive committee with AAM, we didn't have an archive committee, so why?
Kim, you were on the archive committee that we had outside of AAM, and in the transition,
Outside, we
AAM
didn't have
provided
one
two thumb
outside
drives.
of AAM.
Paul, do you have the thumb drives?
We have,
That doesn't make sense.
at
We
least
didn't
one.
have
I don't know if
committees
we have
until
three,
we
but
were
we
in
have
the
three
RN.
boxes, some plans, and a thumb drive.
In an email from,
We're having a discussion and he's back here using profanity with me.
in an
Do you have
email,
the boxes still?
We have 3 boxes, some plans, and I think a thumb drive. Maybe it was 2, I don't remember, 1 or 2, whatever came
wait,
over.
in an email from AAM to you, Paul, they mentioned that there were 24 sets of blueprints that were turned over.
We have those.
24 sets of blueprints, and there were 2 thumb drives with the archive data as we voted for the archive of our documents. Now, those documents, wait, hold on a second. This comment has been made several times that they mentioned they had 1,500 boxes of documents. That was not for just our association. That was for all of the associations that they manage. And they have gone through, which is a very methodical process, to take those documents and archive them, which we have on thumb drives,
Digitally.
digitally.
Wow.
And it was done according to how we voted, and it was done. So yes, we do have the thumb drives. I have not had them because I was not named to the archive committee yet, but now that I am. But speaking of which, since we are on the archive committee, as former secretary, do you have documentation of executive meetings from January?
Actually, since you brought that up, your signature is on here as board secretary.
Well,
So-
because I took minutes, you didn't. But
No,
anyway,
you never
do
did
you
take
have-
minutes actually, and this isn't for minutes.
do you have
This
copies
is for
of,
board resolution.
do you have copies of the executive materials that were presented in executive
No.
session in January?
What happened to all of them?
So you're.
I'm asking a direct, you
No.
can't, because you sent me an email saying you destroyed them.
I didn't say I destroyed.
That's what you said. You said
I
I
said
destroyed them after the meeting.
Disposed.
Oh, okay, well,
Can we use the
disposed,
exact
destroyed?
words? Yes,
What's the difference between disposed and destroyed?
because if you're gonna use my words, use them correctly.
I'm just
That's
asking you what the difference
He's
is.
asking you to quantify
Yeah, is
that.
it, what's the difference between disposed
I
and
just,
destroyed?
they're disposed of, I don't have them.
So we had
Okay, so you-
Well,
support,
you're the board secretary on here, this is your signature,
okay,
and
and
this
then we
is
have
dated 2017.
the landscape committee.
No,
I was going to
That's
actually
not-
propose that since Ken was already on that, and since he has the, obviously the landscape committee proposals and so on, that we keep Ken on the landscape committee
Agree.
and let him build the committee around that as he deems necessary.
Yeah.
We also have an events committee. I'm not so sure that that is robust enough, if you will.
Yeah, I think, you know, based on what I've heard in the last few meetings, there's a desire from the community to have more events, but I also think there's more of a desire around things like the website, things like the process in which we notify people for meetings, things like what is it that the community values and wants out of anything that we do from a vendor perspective, et cetera. So my suggestion was going to be, and I'm happy to share this, is we make it really more of a community committee, which includes events, determining communications, websites, all the things that we can do to just better address some of the, I think, the transparency and the comms issues that we've had up to this point.
Do we have a motion to set up a community events committee?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we do set it up and include events and all the other items we've talked about, website, et cetera, included in that larger community, or committee rather.
I'll second that one.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Guys, how do you get on to the events committee? I'd happily.
Talk to Patrick.
Yeah,
after
so,
Right after the meeting,
yeah,
talk to
what we'll
Patrick,
do is
we'll-
now that we're establishing these committees, we'll make sure that, you know, we can probably put this in an upcoming note to the community, you know, if people are interested, you know, just sign up. Yeah, absolutely.
and this committee does not necessarily need to be chaired by a board member.
Mhm.
This is not one that is mandated under the CCNRs to be chaired by a board member. Okay, that's the committee structures. The next item on our list is, there was a lot of confusion at the last meeting regarding distribution of minutes, regarding distribution of agendas due to mechanical breakdowns, etc. This next is not necessarily a legal issue or anything else, but one of the items that was included in PRM's proposal to us was to provide minute-taking services, provide agenda services, provide community reviews, meaning going through the community and doing their drive-throughs, etc. And all I'm proposing with this is that we charge PRM with doing what we're paying them to do.
Mhm.
And we take it out of the board's hands so that there are no mechanical breakdowns. There are no charges of favoritism, etc. Everything is done independently by the management company. It is proposed to the board. We will review the minutes. We'll get those minutes, the draft minutes out. We'll approve them in the meeting, as we do every other meeting, at the beginning of the meeting. But we'll all have a chance to review them prior to the meeting. So it's not a, oh, yeah, those are good. Let's go.
I second it.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I have a question.
Yes,
Are we adjusting the compensation to PRM for
Nope.
adding the extra?
That was
cents?
already
No,
included.
that was already
Meeting.
part of it, it just, we're happy to do it.
Next one is a quick review of our financial statements. As you can see, there was a packet sent out to you, or handed out to you here, and it will be available online as well. What I wanted to do was to make sure that everyone kind of had an understanding of where we stand so far through April with our expenditures. And I'm not going to look at just April alone. Let's look at the April year-to-date. And if you look at it, January through April, we've got total expenses of $103,000. That is through April 30th. 39% of those expenditures relate to landscape, weed control, fixing our irrigation system, etc. Roughly 39–40%. 10% utilities, most of that is water. You see 8,000 or 9,000. And thanks to a correction of a leak that we had that was discovered in January, that water bill has gone down from roughly $4,000 a month down to a little over $1,200 a month. So we're seeing a significant cutback thanks to the discovery of that leak and the fixing of that leak. If you look at the management contract and management expenses, which is all the office expenses, sorry to call you out for a second here, that roughly accounts for 10% of our expenditures. But one item that we have here is legal, general legal, $22,000 rounded. That's roughly 21% of our total spending is on legal issues. And the purpose of going through this was to let you all know that there may be certain legal expenses that have been incurred that were frivolous. There is, if I look at Sachs Tierney detail bill, there are conversations between Mrs. Palmer and the attorney regarding my executive meeting issues. There are conversations between Mrs. Palmer and the attorney regarding a lot of other issues. Mrs. Palmer, to the last time I checked, was not on the board. And she has not should not have access to any executive meeting issues. There are discussions about ADRA filings against me. ADRA filings, and correct me if I'm wrong, ADRA filings are homeowners against an association. That's a form that is used that allows homeowners to challenge boards, to challenge homeowners associations. It's really the only recourse that homeowners have.
At least low cost reports, I would agree, yeah.
But there's charges from Sachs Tierney regarding reviewing a complaint that's being filed against me with the ADRA, which is funny because I didn't know that the board voted on or approved a specific homeowner filing charges against me. But bottom line is 21% for legal fees, $21,000, almost $22,000 is ridiculous. And
Now you said those were from homeowners,
a homeowner, yes.
A portion of it.
but there is another homeowner suing the HOA, isn't that correct?
Yeah, but that was not the ADRA issue. If we'd like to get into specifics, I'll be more than happy to.
Well,
She
they
is
did
also a
file
board
with
member.
the ADRA.
Well,
Not the Arizona Department of Real Estate?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, we did.
I understand that. I said
Oh,
this is,
okay.
the fee that I'm referring to did not
Oh,
specifically
just the
refer
one
to that
fee
one.
you're referring to.
So in the future, one thing we'd like to do,
Can we, let's get down to that.
okay,
I want to make sure that we talk about that. Bottom line is no expenditures
yeah,
are going to occur, whether they're legal, whether they're landscape, whether they're anything, that are not, if they have to be done emergency, they will be, as we did with the room charges, they will be brought up in the next meeting, and they will be discussed and voted on, so there's perfect transparency. We just don't need to continue to fight with each other. And we have a lot of issues, a lot of criminality at this point, and we'll determine where we move from here. But The issue is, the legal fees for the association need to be checked. And we need to have homeowners, talk to homeowners. We need to have items that hopefully won't have to get to a litigious state. And keep it, I just want everyone to know that we are watching this. And we are looking at all of our expenditures.
Yes.
And we will not incur any additional legal fees. There will be no recourse, no legal action taken without a majority vote of the entire board. Not emails sent between 3 and 4 board members, not emails, not phone calls directly to an attorney, no exceptions of including some that we like and some that we don't like on emails. Every board member will have the opportunity to respond. They can abstain, they can vote with, for, or against, but there will be no hidden agendas.
Well, that's good. Too bad we didn't have that with Clint Goodman.
Too bad we didn't have it 3 months ago, because I've seen through PRM's
So
emails,
Clint Goodman, he's
dozens of
bringing us
emails from
financials.
you where you
They
specifically
were
say,
even more than
I've
his.
excluded Paul from this email. Thank you.
Paul,
That's
you're-
the secretary of our association.
Excuse me, but you're
No,
calling
not the
for
secretary,
congeniality,
you are
and
the
you're the one who's
secretary.
attacking everybody.
Well, she happens to be the
everybody.
one who is challenging us. Yes.
I just have a question.
Well, making comments.
If we're saying it's 21% roughly.
Yeah.
How does that fall within a normal, functional board?
Well, what we would like to see, and then maybe this is hope and a dream and hopefully a goal, is that we get to a point maybe where we don't have to go to lawyers, where somehow. Yeah, somehow the members can get together and reach some sort of an agreement, or probably be compromise. No one's gonna get maybe everything they want, but if everyone can give in a little bit, what we'd really like to see is no legal expenses. That's personally my desire.
The only legal expenses you normally see are
Yeah.
collection.
I guess that's my question.
And if you had collection, it would be charged back to the people who are in collection, so you wouldn't actually
Oh,
incur it.
So as a percentage for a normal HOA, are you talking 2%, 3%?
Sometimes nothing. I mean, if you count that you get reimbursed, most
Well,
of them are
okay.
zero, except for occasional issues. But it has been my impression just in a few months here that this particular group has the ability to have legal battles with each other, and I think it has to sort of be a mental thing that, yes, we can do that, but my view over the many years we've been doing this is ultimately the ones that benefit from that are only the lawyers. And if people could realize, wait a minute, I'll pay my lawyer and he'll pay his lawyer, and then neither one of us are happy, but they walk away with a lot of money, to me, that just doesn't make sense.
Agree.
Yep.
Are we on contract with Saxter? Is that,
No, it's strictly, there's no retainer with that.
That was just the previous lawyer, Clint Goodman. There was a retainer with him.
No, it's just if and when something comes up, and hopefully nothing will be coming up anymore, but you had all
Well,
these issues bubbling to the
okay,
surface.
so, and I apologize again, I mean,
This is why we're having a meeting.
so, was Clint Goodman with Saxter? Is that how?
No.
Clint
Yeah.
Goodman was with AAM. That was the former attorney.
Okay, so how did Saxter get involved?
It's not, we've got a different attorney.
They were referred to the board by Paul, by PRM.
So Brian, right?
Yes, Brian.
Brian Ditch.
Yeah.
Okay. Working in a law firm, then that attorney represents the board, correct? They don't represent homeowners.
That is correct, not the
So
wives.
they should know not to talk to a homeowner.
Not to the individual, they should only talk to someone based on a
Who
voted
is
action.
either a board member or with our management.
Unless somebody else has the answers and he wants to talk to them.
Yeah, I heard he reached out to the.
I heard he reached out.
No,
to
it
ask
was the
questions.
phone call. I'll show you. Actually, I can't show you. I'm sorry, you're not on the board anymore. But there are details where it was phone call received from.
Lots
Not
of fun,
to.
lots of fun.
Yeah, returning
Those
the
cost
cosmetic.
Returning an
Those costs-
So just to put it into
between-
perspective, just as an example, and we won't go into specifics, but an email or a single call, it's like $85.
Okay, but it should have been on him, the lawyer, to say, I'm sorry, you're not a board member,
If
I'm
he
not,
didn't see us as a cash cow, I agree.
I'm not, well, then he's not a very ethical attorney.
Well,
And
you got that one.
Saxter is an
We're-
ethical
we-
law firm.
We're kinda coming to that
And the
opinion.
previous one wasn't either.
I'm sorry. We have. I'm sorry.
Anyway, I'm just saying,
So one in the back and then one in the front.
the attorney needs to shut it down.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we are, that was the purpose of what we just voted
That's why
on.
we're talking about it.
Yes.
I suspect the attorney was doing a fact investigation and not sharing legal opinions or advice with the non-board members, is what I would suspect. But in any event, you're still gonna be charged the attorney's hourly rate, which is billed in quarter of an hour. So if I call and speak with an attorney for 2 seconds, that's quarter of an hour, typically $10 to $40, depending on that attorney's hourly rate. So
$600 an hour.
the attorney, $60 for a 2-minute conversation is
Yeah.
what you would pay. So that's why you need to get attorneys uninvolved. And I know Brian Ditch professionally, I've been opposing counsel with him on cases, and I'm not gonna belittle him or say he's unethical, but he was dealing with the information provided to him.
Yep.
And he had likely a very limited scope on what he was asked to do, and I don't believe that was asked of all board members nor approved of all the board members, so I'm not sure the critical analysis has to be of his actions, but I think it just shows why you need to get away from these litigious actions and try to resolve the underlying issue.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, was there one more up front?
All right. So Brian Ditch is with Saks then, right?
Yes, he is.
Okay, so he's no longer the attorney.
We didn't say that. We just said he is only acting upon unanimous vote of the board.
Okay, do we have a new attorney?
We have not assigned a new attorney.
Okay, so when you were doing questions about the, the realty board, you were talking, you were throwing it to the room when you said that's right, or you throwing it to an individual in the back of the room?
I was just throwing it out as a general comment.
Okay, I'm just making sure there's somebody in the back of the room that's
No.
dealing with new
That
stuff
you
that we
wanted
don't
as a
know
new
about.
attorney.
Nope.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Homeowner.
And if it were, it would
She's
be,
a homeowner.
it would be a legal issue, which would have to be discussed in executive session. That's why we're just talking in generalities, what made up the $21,000. Okay, next item is
We got
item
three
C
advice
for,
back there.
None is ever free.
as with any other transition of board, as board members are voted on and or off a board, there are documents and certain documents that were retained by previous board members. Brett Veldhusen was on the ARC committee, so I'm sure that there's ARC records, et cetera, that he probably has. I'm saying probably. I'm assuming that something was sent to him and he had documents. And likewise, our former secretary should have documents,
No,
et
it
cetera.
wasn't me. I don't know why you keep insisting when your signature is on this paperwork as
Anyway,
board secretary.
we are asking that all relevant board documents be returned to the board. And in the event that we're just asking that you voluntarily surrender documents. It's on the video. Hopefully Brett will see it. We'll have Damon or someone reach out to see if there's any documents that need to be returned.
Paul, would you like me to reach out?
If you would, that would be
Be
wonderful.
on the archive?
Yeah, just to see if there's anything.
Sure.
Thank you.
Painting
Thanks.
contract issue.
Excuse me, I have something to add
Oh,
to.
I'm sorry, yes.
Everything to the art committee, because I was on the art committee too, just came as, what do I say, emails from PRM. So we have no, like I have no documents, but I could wipe them off my email, but then how would you know whether I saved them or not? I mean, in other words, they gave us no documents.
Okay.
So there's nothing in existence.
weren't-
that's
There's no agendas and meeting minutes for the art committee?
That would be Mr. Palmer,
Okay.
who has
But-
those.
Well, Brett was the
In other
one
words,
who
we-
actually
In other
was,
words, we didn't keep copies of those, he kept those for the committee.
Brett
When you
actually
guys are
presented the art committee minutes and so on. That's why I assumed he was the chairman. I apologize if I misspoke.
So, I mean, just to let you know that Brett and I and anybody else who attended didn't keep any documents.
The next item is more informational. We, back in April of 2018, had originally approved a painting contract with a company called Titan. That contract was signed, voted on by the board, signed and executed. Shortly after the execution of the contract, the heat turned up, monsoons began, etc. And it was voted on by the board, not unanimously, but a majority vote, to defer the start of that painting project due to the heat and the weather. In September, when we went back to re-engage, the board at that time was more divisive, and there were questions about paint color, et cetera, and it was just postponed. A paint committee took over, Ken took over, people took over, identifying new paint contracts, et cetera. but they never contacted the former Titan Paint and said, we're canceling our contract with you.
Oh.
So Titan contacted the board last week and said, well, when are you guys gonna start painting?
That's actually incorrect, because it had been over a year since their contract, so it was already voided.
It was not voided.
Yes.
It's an executed contract that was never canceled. There was no expiration date on it.
Yes,
It was
for a
delayed.
year.
But our paint committee went and signed another contract. I am happy to inform you that based on my conversation with Titan Painting, they have, since they have 50 employees, and they were able to redeploy those employees, and they had not purchased any paint with respect to our project. They really had no investment at a minimal investment anyway, and he was going to evaluate his options, but he did not think he was going to pursue any actions.
Do you have a copy of that contract?
As a matter of fact, I do.
Let's see it.
I don't have it with me, but I'll bring it to August meeting. The Titan contract? I'm sure he said that. Yeah.
Yeah, there was no date of expiration on it.
No. It was voted on in April, it was signed by me.
Well, then you really dropped the ball letting it go off for so long, not getting that job done.
I see no expiration.
Wow.
Maybe the paint committee dropped the ball, because you had several conversations with Titan in October and November of last year about the
No,
paint.
that's several, I had one.
No, you had two, there are two emails.
Oh, two is several?
Yeah.
No, two's a couple.
All right.
Okay, so next
Moving on.
is, again, this is what we had already talked about, now we can't beat this up enough. There are no contracts, there are no contacts, there are no contacts with contractors, there are no contracts or contacts with lawyers. There is nothing that will occur without a vote of the board. There is nothing that will be acted upon without all members of the board being informed and understanding what's going on. There will be no more unilateral contact with board members' wives, board members' children, board members' great-grandchildren, etc. Okay, I know we have to be out of here by 12, and we do have an executive session, but I would like to offer 15 or 20 minutes of open homeowner session. If there's anyone who has questions, we're not going to use cards, we're just going to have people stand up and we'll recognize if we can't. Sandy, go ahead.
So I just had a question to the ARC that's just currently serving. They said there was no communication with, they got things from PRM. So is my understanding that they didn't vote on anything since they've been part of the ARC?
No, they had meetings and they voted on them at the meetings, but they didn't have hard copy. They were sent via email.
Okay, so in those meetings, there are minutes of those meetings then available?
Absolutely there are. Mr. Paul has all of those and he'll turn those over to the board.
Okay, cool. All right.
Unlike when you were head of the argument,
Yeah.
you never take notes.
Going forward.
We've never had the ARC.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Hey, did we ever get any traction on the guy that's letting his wall get jacked up with big trees and stuff over there?
Not yet.
Did we hear back from him? So let's say we never do. At what point do you guys, we guys as an association, step in and, I guess, pay for the trees because they continue to demolish the wall? I mean, what are the thoughts on that?
I think you bring up a good point, is that if we can't get the homeowner to respond, we can either fix it, get a bill, and then assess him, and essentially put a lien on his property for the cost of that maintenance.
If it's, yeah.
If he doesn't respond, right?
Where is that at? I'm
Because
sorry.
there's two trees.
There's one on
It's a common wall. I think, what's the street that he's
Spur.
Spur.
So there's one on Spur that I've seen, because I lived over that direction. Is there another one at another?
No,
There's
there's
the one on
two
Spur
trees on that
that I-
property
Oh, it's
that are,
two.
that are breaking.
Volunteer to go
It's
out
two
and
different
help the
spots.
party to get that thing cut down, you know, I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I'd bring a chainsaw.
You're just gonna run into a trespass. It's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, that's illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
That's
correct.
part
But
of it.
If it was one tree, I think it'd be worth doing. He's
Yeah.
got a lot, he's got a lot.
There's at least two
I
trees,
think
one in
he'd
the
probably
short
be
section and one in the big
relieved
one.
with the problem.
So I guess the question is, how long do we wait?
So I think we give him notice, and we say, hey, if you don't take care of it this time, we'll
Check on how far.
we'll get a bid, and we'll give him another point of time to say, hey, here's the bid, either you fix it or we're gonna assess it.
It's safe to see all the work that you're doing, the painted walls and the whole thing, and the next
I
thing you know,
agree.
that wall's gonna fall over.
Yeah, it's about pushing.
So he has not responded.
I don't know right off the top of my head, I'll have to look into it. I think we've been in communication, but I'll
Right.
check into it.
Okay.
Yes.
So is there any possibility, and I know we've been talking about the landscaping, about the pathways, and you guys are in the process of doing stuff, but some of the other stuff, the stuff that's overgrown, there's dead trees around like Bahada, you know, when you come around, that is a fire hazard. And if somebody just throws a match, cigarette, whatever, it's not gonna affect my house, but those houses will be affected. And besides, it doesn't look very good either. I mean, it just looks overgrown. There's dead trees. It's just.
I thought it was Ducks Unlimited.
Yeah, yeah. But if
Well,
somebody.
it could have been, because that's where the water leak was for a year, so it's been growing all that stuff.
Yeah, but you know what I'm
Because it got
talking
water.
about,
Oh,
like when
yeah.
you're coming around,
Yeah.
and right there by.
Yeah.
And
It's a fire hazard, not
It
to
is.
mention a safety hazard.
Exactly, and if somebody, not even just to get rid of it all, if, just get, clean up some of the
Yeah,
mess, and thin
absolutely.
it out, just to thin it out a little bit, it would make it look so
Yeah.
much nicer.
Part
and
of
it
what
would
we
be
were
a-
waiting for was Damon.
Uh-huh.
Damon was looking into the
Fire.
requirements based on the
Right.
fire, how much we could cut back and what we couldn't.
Mhm.
I was really hoping he would be here today, but.
And I'll just say, just as a homeowner over there, it's a priority for me.
Yeah.
I walk with my kids through that all the time.
Right,
And it's,
yeah.
you know, a snake jumped out last time
Yeah.
I was out there. Not that wouldn't occur if it was trimmed, but anyway, it was a lot harder to see. And so,
And that-
Was it a rattle?
no. It
But
was
But that's just a
but-
breeding ground for
Uh,
other.
yeah.
other
I
creatures and
asked
everything.
Escapes to go through those areas, because it's not normally part of the contract.
Exactly,
And give us a proposal, I asked them about a week ago, give us a proposal, I call this a high priority test.
right.
Mhm.
And let them bring it to the board, this is what we propose to do, and this is what we would charge.
Yeah, 'cause it would look so much nicer and everything.
For sure. I mean, this is one of the great things about the community is that trail system, just
Right,
to be able to walk
exactly,
kids. So
yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a priority.
And you know, we do have the new landscape company, so it
Yes,
is taking them a while to assess and get
Right,
involved.
and I get that,
And,
yeah.
yeah, we have to give them
Somebody's
time
new, it
to
always takes some time. I
get their
that.
feet wet.
Can
Yeah.
this be something that can be worked into their routine and normal landscape maintenance?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's like some of the ideas we've kicked around, and we'll make sure we do it the right way. I mean, obviously with Damon following up on what the fire department says and what we can and cannot do, but I mean, things like, you know, maybe as one of the events that we talked about, you know, there's kids that have Boy Scouts in the community that need to do community service projects. I think there's a lot of ways that we can do it in a smart way. There's the things that we want to hire.
Give them snake boots.
Yeah, snake boots. Exactly. There's the things that we want to make sure that are done right, such as trimming and things like that. But there's also trash on that. I was walking through there this morning. I saw some trash. You know, just having like community cleanup stuff like that. I think there's a lot of opportunities of what we can do.
Have
So
an Arbor Day walkthrough, part of that community events group that we started.
yeah, so it's just to answer the question, though, it's definitely a priority. It's just figuring out what do we need to do, what's the right way to do it, and then how do we get community involved around it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about the other board member that's not been showing up lately. I'm just curious to find out, you know, do you guys know?
he is a firefighter, right?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so he, like this weekend, I know he was out of town with a family event.
Excellent.
And so previous one, he got called in to take a shift for the last meeting, so he was not able to last.
Yeah,
two.
I think the question you're asking is this person not in communication? He's in communication, so it's not
Okay.
one of these
He's
situations.
emailing
He is active. Unfortunately, this meeting, as you can see even by the turnout, this meeting was called quickly because we had to address certain issues.
I get it.
But yeah, normal meetings.
I think
he
he's
will be
gonna
there.
be
But-
here.
So he's, because comment was made that he may not stay because of the last meeting that we had.
Who said that?
Yeah.
Ken brought it up, as he may not decide to stay. So I took that as I was curious. Here, I'm trying to find out, because he hasn't been here for 3 or 4 meetings.
He's been on all of our emails.
Got it.
Yeah.
My point is, as me, I'm trying to figure out his intent toward the board, okay?
Yeah.
Is, I'm trying to figure out, is he gonna be someone who's disruptive or working with the board?
Damon's a good guy. I think his intent.
I can't tell because I haven't seen
Yeah.
him at the board meetings that I've attended, and that's why I was just curious to find out what you got, what the thought process was there.
As far as the communication thing, we've sent him everything. I texted him a couple times. I know he's got family stuff that he's doing.
Okay.
But he's a good guy.
And I don't get the intention
Right.
that he's, that description, I mean, I got a welcome email from him, and I don't think that is, I think it's just a scheduling issue.
I
so.
get it then, excellent.
Mark?
A couple things I'd like to see out of this new board. One is we all try to get along here a little bit. I know the, election, I think there's a lot of dirty pool going on. I know there was a gentleman that walked up to the front of my house and hit his face because, you know, he's not man enough to show what paper he wants to put on my door. You know, that kind of stuff needs to go away. The bickering back and forth, that needs to go away. I'm getting really tired of that. I know I am. Enough's enough. If anybody has the right to bicker, I got some issues that I need to bicker about, but that'll be settled later on. You know, I hope that everybody comes together here and we're doing the right things. What was done in the past, in the last 10 years, 11 years of this board, has been a joke. I'd love to see the books audited by an independent accountant firm. I know of one. Has no association with anybody in this community.
Let me add into
Okay,
that.
go ahead.
We've got a lot of accountants right here in the community.
Yeah.
I'm sure if we created a committee with, out of that group could probably take care of it.
Because then a lot of accusations just go away. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for these accusations just to go away so we can get on with it. I got better this meeting and come back and
I mean, that's-
so piss my wife
it's
off.
just-
I
To
brought
what
her
you're
back here 2
saying,
days.
and you're saying that there are people in the community that are accountants, that's great, but it might take somebody that's outside the community
It might.
to actually
Well,
assess
prior
it.
Try to do
I
it.
was just,
Yeah.
Try to do it
Prior
low
to the
cost.
2018 audit, they were independently reviewed. We had an
Okay.
annual review of our financials to ensure that what was on them were proper and valid. Now, did they go through to validate
The
all of the
detail?
controls and so on? I can't attest to that. But there were audits, there were required audits of our financial statements.
so those
all-
would all be archived.
But I think you're
and-
getting
should
more
all
to
be
the
in
point
there.
of knowing the details of what we spent money on.
Right.
And where the
Just
money
making
went.
sure everything's legit,
Yeah.
making sure
Yeah.
committees that were in play, that made decisions are fair for everybody and
Yeah.
not just for certain people because they live on this street or that street.
Yeah.
Because that stuff's been getting carried away.
Yeah. And so I think there's certain things that we as a community have to come to standards on and say these things are important to us, these things are not so important to us. I think the way to do that is actually ask the community and through those email surveys, that way you can kind of give your answer and we don't go, Mark, what was your answer? We
Right.
see it right here.
Right.
You know, we'll just get your answers as a community and we'll come back
The
and say,
entire community.
this is what the community said. But those that responded, here's the answer.
Yeah, I'll just say it's like the first meeting of the new board, you know, that at the core is something we wanna get away from, that it's just, again, anything that is, there's still obviously old business that we're working through, but, you know, from our perspective, it's all about making sure things are done, equitable across the board, where communication needs to take place to the community, communication takes place, and there's avenues for that to happen as well, so, yeah, definitely not perfect today, but I think we're moving towards it.
Because we can all disagree, but when we walk out the door, there's no sense that you can't say hi to your neighbor. You
We're
can't say-
neighbors.
Right.
That's the whole thing.
I have no problem with disagreeing with somebody. but-
Exactly. I don't have to invite you over for Thanksgiving dinner, but I have to be civil.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
that's.
come on, Paul.
I got
I'm sure you guys have-
I bet you guys have some mean lasagna over there.
When Mark made the
Might just
comments
invite
about
myself
the
over.
voting, and he had a funny look on his face just a few seconds ago, when he said something about the voting was kind of weird, I wanted to comment on that, what he meant by that. And what he meant by that was he wasn't at that meeting, but I was. And so when I walked in that night to the last meeting that we all had, there was a table set up by that front door, by that door. And Priscilla was at that table, and she was having people sign if you were voting and things like that. Well, I brought my ballot.
Agreed, that was,
So hold on, I brought my ballot and I handed it in. I had signed my envelope like I was supposed to, filled out my address, did everything I was told I was supposed to do. That was my ballot for that evening.
correct.
However, when I handed it to Priscilla, she said, I need to give you a different ballot. And I said, why? And she did not give me an explanation. She handed me a green one, asked me to vote right there in front of her, and I stuck it in a ballot box.
Yeah.
I did not understand because my ballot then went straight back to the table in the white envelope, but I also voted again in a green one. So how
And they
did that
and they
make
said, and so,
any sense
so yeah,
to
so
vote
I
twice?
was
which I
asking,
did not wanna
I was
do.
asking the same exact question.
Okay,
So, the white envelopes, I thought we were all gonna just turn in because that's what the document said,
Right.
right,
right?
You can
And-
mail them or bring them to the meeting.
correct.
Correct, and so a lot of us brought them, right?
Right.
And so, my concern really was there anything in the green box before it got started? Because who said that 20 votes weren't stuck in there ahead of time, and then we all have these new green ones and add to it?
Well, I hadn't thought of that.
I had.
However, what I had thought about is.
They did a bad job.
You were only supposed
They
to
didn't
vote
put enough
once,
green in it.
however, my vote counted twice.
No, it did not.
No.
All those were
How
set
did-
aside. So all the envelopes, if you got a green one, it was set aside. All the ones that were mailed in,
But how do they know?
they separated them.
When you came in, they kept those in a separate stack.
The ones we got in the mail, we wrote ballot.
Right.
I think the core,
They were
That's-
done.
I
It
think
just seemed really
yeah,
confusing.
I think the core of
and
the
it
issue is
didn't
exactly
seem-
that, right?
And
It
so
was
how can we
confusing
make
to a
that
lot of people,
easier?
even
And
people
so
in the
in the
audience.
future, we would like you guys to talk about what's the best way for us all to vote.
I think just like they do it when
Sign
you go to
the
vote
ballot.
for, no, when you go to vote for a president. You have to actually physically go and vote, or you mail it in. When you go there, you give them your driver's license, they write your name down, you sign it, they give you your ballot, you go vote, you stick it in the box. They don't stick it in the box, you don't hand it to them and they fold it and stick it in,
True.
you stick it in.
So you guys,
And
if you
it-
guys
and
have
it
some
keeps
ideas about how to make
everybody-
that better,
yeah.
let's
I mean, I
let's
just
talk
think
about
that's
that.
right.
And
There has
make
to be a
it-
mechanism for people to.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the
Totally right.
mailing,
Yeah.
that's the mailing,
But yeah, let's
yeah.
come as a
To see
community.
Well, I'm sure we'll
and
have
get
an
answer on
election
that.
committee,
When is the next election?
next annual meeting, so that would be coming up by, and depending, it'll be early next year.
Who's up next year?
Myself and Ken.
So did you ever find out, was that green ballot box empty when it
I
started?
believe it was.
When they
because-
reconciled
because
the
they-
count of the
People
people
that
that
came
signed
in.
in and the number of votes that were in.
So we know the vote was
Yeah.
legitimate.
Paul, I believe you're wrong on that. I think Damon's only up this next one because he replaced John Ramey, who would be up this next one. You and Dad have 2 years. Just check it out. I'm pretty sure I'm right.
I believe I'm up, but I hope you're right, but yes.
I believe so. I believe you're 2 years.
Any other comments, questions? Yeah.
I have a question about, is there some sort of mandatory attendance that's necessary for a board guy? Just tail
Just
off of
a
his question.
quorum.
Yeah.
So you don't
so
have
if
to
we've got
physically be
five-
here X amount of times or X percent.
No,
No, there, unfortunately, there's nothing written
Okay.
that states you should be. I mean, I think it's, there's nothing written.
Okay.
Perhaps do we need to amend our CCNRs?
Hmm.
I mean, it's nice to,
Do you think you can get 75% of the people to vote for something? when
Electronically,
Only this many people show up for.
Well, we got 200 out of 349 at the last vote, the
We
annual
did?
meeting.
200?
Yeah, 200.
That's
The
awesome.
previous one was a lot less. So.
I mean, in absent,
No, I think it's
I
100.
understand he's active and I understand the firefighter schedule.
Yeah.
I was mayor of police officer.
You get it.
Please, there's no comparison. I am retired now, but we know which side works.
Doesn't the mustache get in the way?
Okay, homeowner
Wait,
involvement, I'm a
But
fireman,
anyway,
so,
it's
I'm a
nice
fireman,
to-
I'm a fireman,
You're
and
way
you know
too
what, I
happy.
pay, yeah,
Way too
exactly, I paid every meeting, I work 24 hours on, 48 hours off.
I'm sorry, we really are getting
Yeah.
something.
I'm just saying,
If you
yeah.
wanted to make one more
Yeah.
comment.
No, I just, it's, you may be behind the scenes, but then it
Yeah,
makes
every
it
time I feel it.
hard when you come to meetings
Yeah.
and he's not.
You're
here.
trying to come up to speed, but trust me, he is involved in all of the emails, so he's up to speed, but you're absolutely right, he needs, yeah.
Activity.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Michelle, you had a question?
Yeah, I just had a question about the painting of the seats and the trash cans. You were gonna
Oh
talk
yeah.
about that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I think it makes sense for us to look into what would it cost us, option one, to make the trash cans and bench seats match the existing rail color. Option two would be, do we want to paint all the trash cans, rails, and benches to a desert color? And so to me, if you want to take it to a desert color, my personal view would be this, but I think we should let you guys vote and have a discussion. Does it make sense for us to bring it all to a desert color, or just paint the cans and benches to match the rails? Those would be the two options, and we get quotes for both.
Well, we've already painted the rails, right?
Correct. And so when I talked
Yeah.
to the painter one day driving by, I said, if we ever wanted to change those, does it cost a lot? He goes, well, it costs a lot less because we just refinished them to this. So if we want to do it now, it'd be now the time to do it before it gets super hot.
Do those?
I just have a question in considering color. It's everybody's real beef with it was when it did break through in a spot and it rusted or whatever, which may be years down the road now because they've done it correctly. But it's going to look a lot less bad to have something colored that's close to the rust than it is to do that light color, which then completely looked crappy. I mean, I just
No, it's
as
a fair
as
consideration. It's a fair consideration for sure.
I mean, the closer to rust that you are, the better rust color.
I ordered a new car in Bondo color. Yeah.
But either way, I think the big thing is now that we have, and at first I was like, wow, that's me personally. I was like, wow, that's very. you can really see them now, and now it's just kind of grown on me. But now the next thing I notice is like we've got these brand new pretty rails, and really it makes the trash cans and the seats look much worse. So I just think we have to do something.
Do those have a coating on them, the benches and the trash cans? Or are they bare metal?
No, it's like a baked on. It's actually quite thick.
Absolutely.
I don't know that you
Can
Can
paint those.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Right.
that you can, to be honest with you, so that'd be the first thing I'd check to see if it's even possible.
Yeah.
Because if it's that rubberized.
That's what I
It won't
think.
take.
I don't know if the trash cans are, but I know that like what you're saying on the
The benches,
benches.
right?
I think the benches.
Probably for the heat, right? So.
But you know what,
Yeah.
they actually may have a rubberized
They
type
may.
paint that they can do it with.
Because
so.
I've noticed in other subdivisions, they have done their, chairs.
Yeah.
Because you can tell by looking at them, they're like, just
There you go.
they're either,
Sun faded versus
yeah, they're
just-
either
Yeah.
brand new or just recently painted because they look good.
So one of the things that we'll do is we will just ask the painter for options. And just say
Yeah.
option 1, option 2, what can we do? And then I think we decide in August.
Yeah, and so just so we're all clear on what the additional cost would be if
For
we
sure.
wanted to go the other route.
Correct.
Because like I say, with the painting, I've been in contracting my whole life. The painting now would be really a lot less if we did want to change the colors. However people want to go.
Okay. Anything else?
One more thing, if this $70 or $70,000, if we ever get it back, and who, if we do, I consider it a gift, but
Bonus day.
instead of trying to give every homeowner in this place $40 or $50, maybe we can use it to bring up landscaping to an acceptable level. Cause I think that, just something for everybody to think about. Cause the money that's gonna be involved in giving everybody $40 back, it's gonna take 20 grand to do that. So, Four Peaks destroyed our landscape. The place does not look like when we moved in. And, I think it's gonna take a lot more than 70 grand to get us there, but, that'd be a gift of, it's not coming out of our fund, it's a gift back to us, and use it in a proper way. Just a thought.
And I think the engineering study is going to give us an idea of where the rest of our reserves stand.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. Determine what we can use it for, what it's needed for, and then we can vote on it. Or send out surveys saying, here's the money,
Or the top 5
what's your
priorities
top
of the
5, and
community.
let's do it that way.
Yep.
Sandy?
Okay, well, I'm sorry, are there any more after Sandy?
One more. Sandy.
Okay, one more then.
I just know, I know you guys gotta get the executive session. I just wanna say this has been the best meeting that I've ever attended. Seriously, thank you guys.
Hopefully this is the first of a trend, and I thank you. Again, I thank everyone for our new board members. I thank you for coming out today. I do apologize once again for such an inconvenient time. It was not intentional. It really was a matter of only being able to. So thank you.
Happy Memorial Day, everybody.
Happy Memorial Day. Thank you so much.
Have a good weekend, guys. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Have a great holiday. Yeah. Thanks, sir.
Sorry, good holiday.
That's okay, you guys will all get my bill for the condo.
Calling a open meeting to address items that we just discussed in executive session so that it's clear to the homeowners what actions we took in executive session without giving the details of the actual actions. I am making a motion to approve PRM to pursue a violation of our CCNRs and to send us a draft of the letter that we will review and get back to him. That will be sent to the homeowner. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I am also asking for authorization to contact a particular homeowner that has begun litigation against the association according to the ADRA rules. I am going to speak to the homeowner
with respect to our action taken in our last vote. Do I have the board's authority to make that contact?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't believe that needs a vote, but just in case, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I am also asking for authorization. I want to be clear. Authorization to reach out unilaterally to our attorney and inform him that he is to pursue no additional legal action unless specifically instructed by an action of the entire board. Once again, I'm making that motion to reach out to him on behalf of the board, not unilaterally. Do I have a second?
Yep, second.
I am also going to, during that conversation, instruct him that no one is to contact him directly.
Yeah. Seconded, let's
last,
vote.
I vote, yeah, I've seconded it. Aye?
Yeah. Aye. Aye.
Okay. Last but not least, we are asking Paul to make a good faith attempt to recover certain fees that were paid out to certain homeowners and try to recover those fees for the board due to processes that we discussed in executive session. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is now 12:05. I'll make a meeting that we adjourn.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good. A lot of fun.